Well, on that note, let's check in with Samgele Masego, who's standing by with this week's episode of Explain and Verify. And this, of course, Samgele, as South Africans wait then to hear what will be of the 7th administration and what kind of cabinet it's likely to have. And especially because when you think about the number of questions that South Africans are raising, there's, of course, do you accommodate everybody? What does it look like? How many political parties make up this government of national unity at a cabinet level? Samgele.
Well, Bongiwe, today marks the 8th day after the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa was sworn in as the president of the country's 7th democratic administration. However, the president has yet to announce his cabinet. There appears to be a standoff between the ANC and the DA over the allocation of cabinet positions. There are leaked letters purported to be from both parties. Neither party has agreed nor denied these letters. However, it seems party negotiations are at an advanced stage. The GNU currently has 10 political parties. It remains to be seen which parties will get much sought-after cabinet positions. Let's listen to some of the scenarios that may play out, particularly after tonight's inquintessential DA's FedEx meeting.
There are about 4 scenarios that can play itself out within the next, let's say, 24 to about 72 hours. The one is the continuation of a minority government with the ANC together with minority parties. Then the original one, the government of national unity, including both the ANC, the DA, as well as the IFP as the core partners and maybe some others. Then there's the third one, and that is a turn to the left, basically where the ANC say, okay, we use minority parties, but we may incorporate a party to the left of the center, probably the EFF. The fourth scenario is the potential for instability, not creating a government, and the possibility of a next election. I believe, however, that the chances are more than 50% that we may end up in some sort of an agreement between the ANC, the DA, and the IFP.
Section 87 of the Constitution says that the President must assume office within 5 days after election by Parliament. The other constitutional provisions dictate that the first sitting of the National Assembly after an election must take place no later than 14 days after the election results are announced. Interestingly, though, the Constitution is very silent on the maximum amount of time it may take to announce cabinet, Bongiwe. So, the President has all the time in the world to announce his cabinet because the Constitution they swore to protect and to obey is very mute, silent, and quiet on the amount of time he has to announce his cabinet.
So, Samgele, of course, a lot of questions even around the fact that while he has more time, is this the longest time that we've seen when you look at his predecessors, you know, when it comes to how long he is taking to announce the cabinet, but also at the same time, what does it mean in light of these letters that you are talking about as well, especially when you think about the Democratic Alliance in that letter where they talk about that they are now seemingly, you know, compromising much more than the ANC, and that's what they're saying. And then they're saying that, of course, for them, what does it mean then when they have to take, you know, this particular proposal back? And that is the leader of the Democratic Alliance there, who says, when I have to take it back now to the leaders, it seems like it's going to be a difficult ask. And then you see what the ANC has to say in its particular letter through its President Cyril Ramaphosa, who talks about the fact that he's finding, you know, the tone of the letter by Helen Zille condescending and really unconstitutional. And then, you know, he continues to further say, Samgele, that he wants to ensure that he wraps this up by the end of the week. So let's look at that and whether or not this is the longest we've seen when it comes to the announcement.
The reality of the matter is, Bongiwe, this is the longest period we've ever seen that a president has been inaugurated and is yet to announce his cabinet. The longest was back in 2019, when the president of the ANC won his first term as president of the country. That was the longest period ever that South Africans had to wait for the announcement of the executive of the country. But interestingly, those letters of the ANC and DA, and particularly the last final letter of the ANC president to the Democratic Alliance, has rattled the DA because they had a FedEx meeting this afternoon. There was inconsequential decisions that were taken in that FedEx meeting that took place virtually this afternoon, where the DA basically resolved that they will talk further. They will negotiate and engage further with the African National Congress on the constitution of cabinet. They have been offered 6 ministerial positions and ultimately also deputy ministry positions. And that will ultimately mean that the DA also wants 8 cabinet posts, which the president essentially in his letter says the DA is moving goalpost when it comes to negotiations on this particular matter. He says he doesn't even want to dwell into unconstitutional means that the DA, in the letter of Helen Ziller, they delved into, of firing director generals, cancelling contracts that had already been awarded.
And even having a deputy finance ministry that has full cabinet position, rights. When you look at the constitution, it is clear on that.
Essentially, the president is saying that the DA's proposals are unconstitutional. It says much about a party that seeks to portray itself as the protectors of the very same constitution, which brings about the question, is there a difference between the DA and the MK party, which has been branded as a party that is against the South African constitution? But on this left-hand side, you've got a DA that has letters written down in black and white on matters that are unconstitutional. And that then brings about the question, is this the same flip of the same coin between the MK party and the Democratic Alliance? But to go back on the issue of the inauguration and the announcement of cabinet, let's look at former President Nelson Mandela's inauguration. He was inaugurated in 1994, 10th of May. That was the inauguration of the founding president during the interim constitution of the country, which saw 2 deputy presidents, Thabo Mbeki, F.W. de Klerk. The president then, Nelson Mandela, on the 11th of May 1994, the very following day, he announced the Cabinet of Government of National Unity at the time, which had 27 cabinet ministers. Then you move to former President Mbeki's first election, 1999. On the 16th of June, he was inaugurated. On the 17th of June 1999, former President Mbeki announced his cabinet. Increased by 1 ministry, it went to 28 ministers. Then you go to the aftermath of the Polokwane conference, the aftermath of former President Kgalema Motlante's interim period with, that would be the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Baleka Mbete, at the time as Deputy President. You go to Jacob Zuma's tenure after the coalition of the wounded in Polokwane. The 9th of May 2009, inauguration of former President Zuma. 10th of May 2009, cabinet was announced. Cabinet then ballooned to 34 cabinet ministers, subsequently further remuneration and political perks for political allies, it went to 36 cabinet ministers. Then you go to 2019, Cyril Ramaphosa's term, first term with David Mabuza as his deputy president. He was inaugurated on the 25th of May 2019. On the 29th of May 2019, that would be 26, 27, 28, 29. On the 4th day after his inauguration, Cyril Ramaphosa announced his cabinet. That was the longest wait then for South Africans. This time around, cabinet went to from 28 ministers and jumped to 30 cabinet ministers during Cyril Ramaphosa's tenure in office as President of the Republic of South Africa. Bongiwe.
And Samkelo, I suppose then it also speaks to, a lot of the questions that are being raised right now to say that what does the picture look like then globally?
As you saw, Bongiwe, in the graphics, globally countries take over normally a year to form a coalition government. That we've seen in most countries, that they take a longer period to form governments, particularly. And if you were to look at some of the issues raised within BRICS countries, it takes a much longer period to negotiate those coalition governments and the ministries that then come in within those particular departments, those particular ministries. It will take quite some time. South Africa is finding its feet. We are in the teething phases of this coalition era within the country. And it then just brings about the prospects of cabinet ministers. Will the president trim down his cabinet? Will he not trim down his cabinet? We know that the proposals that were there on the table is that he cuts his cabinet post from 30 to 24 ministries. That is on the table as we currently speak. That he is saying cabinet is bloated, South Africa is not doing well financially, the fiscus is constrained. And just like other BRICS countries, particularly if you were to take Russia, Russia has 21 ministers. Then you go to India. India and South Africa currently have 30 cabinet ministers. China, on the other hand, has 37 ministers, which is the biggest economy within the BRICS formations and the second biggest economy in the world. Then Brazil has 38 cabinet ministers within their particular administration, Bongiwe. And
So Samkele, when you look at the costs then of all of this, especially now with 10 parties and the government of national unity, the accommodation possibly of everyone, let's look at what then does this cost us?
Let's look at the perks, Bongiwe, how much these politicians particularly earn. Let's just start off with the perks of the president. This is what is at stake here, Bongiwe. For instance, let me take the highly contested position that John Steenhuisen wants, which is deputy president of the country, which is currently held by Shipokosa Paul Mashatile, the deputy president. That is 3.1 million rands per annum, excluding other perks like houses in Cape Town, in Gauteng, where the deputy president resides. That is excluding the vehicles and other perks of travel that they particularly have. Let's come to the number one citizen of the country. Within this financial year, 2024-2025, the president currently earns 4.2 million rands. Then you go to ministers who are very anxious sitting at home. I don't know how many calls I've fielded from some of them asking, Emrena, what's happening? When is this man speaking? Those guys currently sitting at home, and ladies, they are at risk of losing their 2.6 million rands worth of salaries, excluding their posh houses in Cape Town that they are given, which they pay rent for, by the way, and also in Pretoria, in Waterkloof. And there are some cabinet ministers who reside in their own private residences. You take the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, he resides within his own private residence. There are a number of ministers who do that as well. You take the president as well. He resides in his own private home in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, resides in his private home in the posh suburbs of Cape Town on First Naya. That's where the president stays. And which brought about many questions is that is it wasteful expenditure to have these particular houses in Mahlambandlovu and also in Cape Town that are not occupied by the president at this point in time? Hence, some people raise the question, why is the deputy president not utilizing the DP's house in Pretoria, which also the former deputy president, David Dabete Mabuza, did not utilize. He had his own private residence in Bryanston, where he was residing, did not use the state house. So you've got the same situation again with Paul Mashatile, residing where he resides in his 3.37 million rands worth of house somewhere in the north of Johannesburg as well, and his 27 million rands house in the Western Cape, which has brought about some serious scrutiny around him as well, particularly by newspaper outlets, Bongiwe. And then essentially we go to the National Council of Provinces and the National Assembly. Let's look at how the Speaker, who currently earns 3.1 million rands, that is Togo Titiza. I almost said Tani Mutize. That is Togo Titiza there, who is the Speaker of the National Assembly. You go to the NCOP chair, the National Council of Provinces. That is the former Premier of Mpumalanga, Refilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane. She is coming in at 3.1 million rands. You go to the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, who comes from the Democratic Alliance. She then earns 2.2 million rands. You go to the Deputy Speaker of the NCOP. They earn 2.2 million rands. You go to a member of the National Assembly. So those 400 members of parliament, whether you come from the NCOP, the regional ballot paper, from provinces, national ballot paper, you will earn about 1.2 million rands. That is an ordinary member of the National Assembly. Then permanent delegate to the NCOP, that is the same amount of money, 1.2 million rands. That is how much those particular politicians are earning at this point in time. Then we go to the provincial legislatures, the premiers. So Nomusa Dube lost out in the cold now. She loses out on 2.5 million rands, which has now been gained by Tamin Tuli in KwaZulu-Natal. Zamani Sol remains his salary in the Northern Cape. You go to the province of the Free State, where Mxolisi Dukwana lost that particular salary to McQueen, who is currently the Premier of the Free State. You go to Mpumalanga, that is Mandla Ndlovu's salary rather. Ellen Windy retained his salary. Then you go to the excos within the provinces, the members of the executive councils of provinces. They are earning 2.2 million rands. Those are all the MECs in the provinces. So in Gauteng, those 10 MECs of the ANC who are very anxious whether Panyaza Lusufi will retain them or not, or whether the economic freedom fighters with their 2 proposed MECs within the province of Gauteng, whether they will sneak in. They are looking and watching and saying, we're about to score that 2.2 million rand salary per annum, excluding the benefits of vehicles and other travel allowances, phones, iPads, and also MacBooks that they also get. Then the speakers of the provincial legislatures earn 2.2 million rands, same as the MECs. Then you get the deputy speaker who earns 1.7 in all 9 provinces, 1.7 million rands. Then ordinary members of the provincial legislature, their salaries are 1.2 million rands. So you take someone who was sitting at home, unemployed, who then just jumps to a salary of 1.2 million rands. That person, Bongiwe, will not want to lose that particular salary, and hence you find the battles that you are seeing. Hence you find individuals like Boyo Mamabulo in Limpopo, who is taking his own political organization to court in order to protect that particular salary. With some of the court papers we've seen, you see politicians essentially saying that this is the only income that I have to maintain my livelihood, and if you take it away, it means I lose my house in an estate and I have to go back to a township, or I have to go back to rural areas.
It speaks, though, to how lucrative, this politics business is then, because when you look at some of these numbers, but you juxtapose that against the state of the economy as well as the number of unemployed South Africans.
Yes, well, your politics is very lucrative, particularly when you take someone who's uneducated, who Gwede Mantashe always says, and Thabo Mbeki always says, that shouts the loudest, sings the loudest, is the loudest, but may not have the necessary political and intellectual capabilities and professionalism to take South Africa to the next layer. And hence you see political parties now trying to bring in some sort of qualifications and interviews. Hence you saw individuals like Mxolisi Dukwana losing out on premiership in provinces like in the Free State province. Yes, there are lucrative remunerations in these political positions, which excludes benefits such as cars, homes, VIP protection. So anyone appointed to ministerial or deputy ministerial positions becomes a millionaire. In context, there are 16.7 million employed people in South Africa. According to UNISA's Business Intelligence Unit Bureau of Market Research, in 2022, 75% of the employed adult population currently earn below 5.8 or 5,800 per month. The official unemployment is at 32.9%, and the unemployed receive 370 rands per month, when politicians ordinarily get 1.2 million to 1.8 to 1.3, 1.4 million, and ultimately going up to 4.2 million as the President of the Republic of South Africa. So imagine a Jacob Gedlehlekisa Mhlanganyelwa Zuma with a standard 2, having not been to higher education, having only known politics his entire life, and you want to essentially remove that position, that person from a position, charge him, take him to political obscurity, and risking those particular perks. It just tells you that politics has become a career to many South African politicians who will kill, who will do anything to protect those particular lucrative positions. Hence, there has been a moral decay in South African politics. Hence, the diagnostic report of the governing party speaks about an intellectual bankruptcy and ideological bankruptcy of politicians. But that also transcends to other political formations whom may have a different skin color, whom send people with matric to high positions of power, who don't have higher qualifications, who fake qualifications. But because of the color of their skin, it sometimes is not blown to proportion, unlike someone who was in this particular building in the SABC.
It's an interesting game of politics, eh? Very, very interesting, Samgela. Thank you so much for, of course, just explaining to us and verifying some of the information that is there in the public domain. So, of course, till next time, Samgela Masego will be back next week with another episode of Explain and Verify. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the SANDF and, of course, the developments there in the DRC.